There are stories that begin with triumph, with glory, with the bright shine of success, but this is not one of them. This story begins in silence. In a hotel where everything sparkles on the surface, but beneath the marble floors and golden chandeliers lies a world shaped by pressure, by fear, by ambition, twisting itself into something darker. Before the humiliation, before the revelation, before the world learned who the quiet young man in the staff uniform really was, there was a moment, a single choice, that set the entire chain of events in motion. It happened in Dubai, a city that rises like a dream from the desert heat, where fortunes are built in days and reputations destroyed in seconds. A place where power walks openly, and yet sometimes it hides in plain sight. In that city lived a man whose name could move markets, whose signature could build towers, whose silence could end careers. But for reasons only he understood, he stepped away from his palace of glass and gold to walk among ordinary workers, trading his influence for anonymity. He wanted to see the truth, the kind of truth that billionaires are rarely exposed to. And the truth came for him swiftly. It came in the form of unchecked authority, of a manager whose confidence was sharpened into cruelty, of a system that bowed to the wealthy while stepping on the invisible. It came through humiliation, through a shattered object on a cold floor, and through the sting of being treated as less than human. What no one knew, not the guests, not the staff, and certainly not the man who humiliated him, was that the person wearing that simple uniform was the very owner of everything around them. A man who had built the empire they were so careless with, a man who had come to watch and ended up being tested, and so begins the story of a billionaire disguised as a worker, a tyrant who mistook humility for weakness, and a hotel where every secret would eventually be dragged into the light. The crash echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. 1,000 conversations froze mid-sentence as the crystal vase struck the marble floor, exploding into glittering fragments that scattered beneath the polished shoes of startled guests. Water spread in a widening circle, soaking into the pristine carpet as the young Arab man stood paralyzed, still gripping the room service tray that had slipped just enough to cause the disaster. The air thickened instantly. Every head turned, every whisper sharpened, and then came the footsteps, fast, furious, slicing through the silence. Victor Crane, the hotel's manager, moved like a man whose authority was a weapon. His jaw was clenched, his eyes blazing with the cold fury of someone who believed mistakes were personal insults. He stopped inches from the young man, his voice rising above the shocked murmurs. "Unbelievable. Do you even understand what you've just done?" His words snapped like whips. Guests watched, some pitying, others entertained, as he berated the clumsy employee for incompetence, for carelessness, for daring to disrupt the flawless illusion of luxury. The young man lowered his head, not out of guilt, but to hide the sharp breath he took to steady himself. He could feel the heat of humiliation spreading across his face, feel dozens of eyes judging him without knowing a single thing about him, and yet he remained silent, because none of them knew the truth. Not Victor, not the guests, not even the staff frozen in place behind the reception desk. No one knew that the man being humiliated in front of the entire lobby owned the building they were standing in. No one knew that the worker they were staring at was actually Amir Al-Haddad, one of the wealthiest men in Dubai, hiding inside a simple uniform for reasons none of them could imagine. And this moment of public humiliation, sparked by a shattered vase and a manager's wounded pride, was about to change the fate of everyone in that hotel. Amir Al-Haddad had grown accustomed to the weight of power pressing against his shoulders, a constant presence that followed him from boardrooms to private meetings in the tallest towers of Dubai. Born into a dynasty built on real estate, transportation, and luxury hospitality, His life had always been wrapped in layers of formality, expectations, and silence. People bowed to him before he even spoke, agreeing with decisions he hadn't yet made, offering praise he didn't need and loyalty he never fully trusted. What they didn't know was that beneath the tailored suits and the effortless authority, Amir felt trapped inside a world that moved too fast, demanded too much, and offered too little humanity in return. He longed to understand the people who kept his empire alive. The workers who never appeared in annual reports, the employees whose struggles were wiped away by polished advertisements. He wanted real truth, unfiltered, unpolished, untouched by the distortion of his wealth. And so he made a rare decision. He walked away from his penthouse office, dismissed his usual entourage, and blended into the very environment he controlled. Borrowing a simple staff uniform, he entered his own hotel anonymously, carrying the name of Amir Al-Haddad, stripped of its power, its titles, its legacy. He expected exhaustion, long hours, and the rough edges of reality. But what he didn't expect was the quiet strength of the workers around him. He watched them juggle impossible demands with tired smiles, endure disrespect with lowered eyes, and sacrifice their well-being for the sake of maintaining the illusion of perfection. Each moment chipped away at the distance between him and them, revealing a world he had built but had never truly understood. It was in those hours, folding sheets, carrying trays and cleaning hallways, that Amir realized how deeply disconnected his leadership had become from the people it was supposed to uplift. But the deeper he went, the more he saw the real enemy. The managerial culture ruling the hotel with an iron fist. Supervisors barked orders without looking workers in the eye. Senior staff manipulated schedules to punish anyone who complained, and fear flowed through the hallways faster than the guests' laughter. Still, Amir stayed in character, telling himself he was there only to observe, never intervene. Yet, as he carried trays across the marble floors that morning, he felt a storm building, the inevitable collision between his hidden identity and the harsh reality unfolding before him. And though he had come seeking truth, he had not expected the truth to come for him first, in the form of humiliation witnessed by an entire lobby. Victor Crane carried authority the way some men carry weapons, visible, intimidating, sharpened to an edge that cut long before it touched flesh. An American executive brought in to modernize the Dubai branch of the hotel empire. He walked through the halls with the cold confidence of someone who believed efficiency was more valuable than human dignity. His suits were tailored in New York, his watch Swiss, his smile precise and rehearsed, a mask polished enough to hide every ruthless impulse beneath. Staff whispered about him in break rooms, recalling firings done without warning, punishments disguised as restructuring, and icy pep talks that left employees trembling. Victor had never built an empire of his own, but he was an expert at controlling one, wrapping it in fear, trimming away compassion, and turning every department into a machine that served his ambitions. Under his command, the hotel gleamed brighter than ever for guests, and grew darker than ever for the people who worked behind the scenes. To Victor, the hotel wasn't simply a business. It was a battlefield where perception mattered more than truth. He believed that perfection could be forced, that loyalty could be extracted, and that respect was something employees owed him automatically. His rise through the company had been swift, fueled by numbers, efficiency charts, and a polished talent for impressing investors. But beneath his composed exterior lay a man terrified of losing control, terrified of being overshadowed by the legacy of the Al-Haddad family, whose empire he managed but did not own. Each perfection-tinted decision he made was a desperate attempt to prove he was indispensable, and in his eyes, workers were not people. They were moving pieces, replaceable and voiceless. When the vase shattered and the lobby froze, Victor saw not a simple accident, but a threat to his meticulously crafted image. He stormed forward with a fury fed by insecurity, convinced that any flaw within his hotel reflected directly on him. The sight of the young Arab employee standing stiffly beside the broken crystal ignited every cruel instinct in him. Here was a target he could control, someone he could blame, someone he could tear down publicly to reassert his dominance. He had no idea, no suspicion, not even a passing thought, that the man he was about to humiliate was the one person in the building whose power far exceeded his own. And as he marched closer, driven by ego, he unknowingly set in motion the downfall he had spent his entire life trying to avoid. The moment Victor reached the young man, the atmosphere in the lobby shifted from shock to discomfort, as if the entire room was holding its breath. Victor leaned in, his voice razor-sharp, loud enough to echo off the marble pillars. "Look at this mess," he said, pointing to the shattered crystal as if it were a crime scene. "Do you have any idea what a single vase in this lobby costs? Do you understand what it means to maintain standards in a hotel of this caliber?" His tone dripped with disdain, each word designed not just to reprimand, but to belittle. Guests watched from velvet chairs, some whispering, others pretending not to see, yet their eyes remained fixed on the unfolding scene. And Amir, standing in the center of it, felt every gaze like a stone pressing against his chest. He kept his head lowered, not out of guilt, but because revealing even a fraction of who he truly was would change everything too soon. He had come to observe, to understand the culture beneath the polished facade, but he hadn't expected the culture to crush him so quickly. Victor's tirade grew sharper as he stepped closer, invading the young man's space, his breath hot with anger. "This is why standards drop," he continued, pacing as if performing for an audience. "Workers like you, careless, slow, unfocused." He turned to the guests, using them as witnesses. "This is what I have to deal with daily, dead weight dragging the hotel down." A hush swept through the room. Even the air-conditioning hum seemed to fade. The cruelty wasn't just in Victor's words, it was in the way he wielded them, in the cold artistry of humiliation. He didn't want correction or improvement, he wanted submission. And with each insult, Amir felt a strange mix of shame and clarity rising inside him. This wasn't just a bad manager. This was a system shaped by fear, one that thrived on crushing those who had the least power to defend themselves. Then, in a final blow meant to destroy whatever pride remained, Victor jabbed a finger toward Amir's chest. "Clean this up and report to my office. You're on probation, if you're even lucky enough to keep your job." The lobby remained silent, heavy, suffocating. Amir bent to gather the shattered glass, the cold fragments cutting lightly against his fingers. He felt the sting, not from the wounds, but from the realization of how deeply invisible people like this were treated. He had walked into his hotel to see the truth, and now the truth stood over him, towering, arrogant, confident that he had just humiliated a powerless worker. Victor turned away, satisfied, unaware that he had just humiliated the owner of the empire he believed he controlled. Unaware that this single moment, born of pride and cruelty, would unravel everything he had built. As Amir knelt to gather the shattered pieces, his hands steady despite the sting, Victor barked another order without even looking at him, waving a clipboard filled with numbers he clearly hadn't reviewed. Carefully. "And since you enjoy making trouble," he snapped, "you can calculate the replacement cost of that vase and the insurance adjustments. I doubt you can even read half of this." He shoved the clipboard toward Amir, expecting confusion, maybe panic, anything that would further validate his cruelty in front of the observing guests. But instead, Amir rose slowly, his eyes calm, and studied the sheet with a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the chaos around them. He traced a finger along the columns of inflated numbers and crossed-out sections, seeing instantly what Victor himself had failed to notice. He inhaled deeply, then spoke, not with anger, not even with defiance, but with a precision that sliced through the tension. "These estimates are incorrect," he said softly, yet loud enough for nearby staff to hear. Victor turned sharply, stunned by the interruption. "Excuse me?" he demanded, expecting an apology, not correction. But Amir continued, his tone growing firmer. "The vase isn't insured under the luxury art policy. It's categorized under lobby decor, which means depreciation is calculated differently. This number," he pointed at Victor's estimate, "is almost triple what it should be. And the replacement cost listed here is from last year's catalogue. The updated one has it marked 20% lower." A stunned silence fell over the lobby. A few receptionists exchanged glances, their expressions torn between shock and admiration. Even a couple of guests paused in their indignation to listen. Amir handed the clipboard back with a steady hand. For the first time, Victor's face flickered, confusion mixing with irritation, his authority wobbling in front of an audience he valued far too much. Trying to recover, Victor forced a hollow laugh. "So you memorized a catalogue? Congratulations. Still doesn't change your mess." But the insecurity in his voice betrayed him. He hadn't expected competence, especially not from someone he believed to be beneath him, and certainly not competence that exposed his own negligence. Amir could have continued. He could have dismantled every flawed procedure, every outdated system Victor clung to. But he stopped, reminded of his mission: observe, don't reveal. Yet the moment had already shifted something. The staff looked at Amir differently now, not as a clumsy employee, but as someone who understood their world with a depth they had never seen from management. Victor sensed the shift too, and fear, quick, sharp, and ugly, flashed behind his eyes. In that instant, Amir realized he had unintentionally shown a glimpse of the power he was trying to hide, a glimpse that would cost him dearly in the next moment. Victor's humiliation curdled into something darker, a cold, calculated anger, sharpened by the fear of losing control in front of the very people he demanded obedience from. He stepped closer, close enough that Amir could feel the heat of his rage radiating off him. "I don't know who you think you are," Victor hissed, no longer performing for the guests, now speaking with a venom meant only for the man in front of him. "But I don't tolerate insubordination. Ever." His voice dropped into a harsh whisper dripping with frustration. "You just cost yourself your job." Then louder, loud enough to echo across the lobby, he declared, "You're fired. Security, escort him out, now." Gasps rippled through the staff. A few guests frowned, sensing the punishment was far too severe for a simple accident, but Victor didn't care. Someone had challenged him publicly, and he needed to re-establish dominance, even if it meant destroying a man he believed was powerless. 2 security guards approached, hesitant but obedient. Amir didn't resist. He simply released a slow breath, letting the weight of the moment settle. He had come into this hotel seeking truth, and here it was, raw, unapologetic, cruel. Workers nearby avoided eye contact, their faces etched with silent apology, silent fear. A housekeeper whispered something under her breath, a soft prayer, perhaps, or a hope that he would be okay. But none stepped forward. They couldn't. Victor had built a culture where defending someone else meant risking your own livelihood. Amir walked toward the exit, the uniform suddenly feeling heavier on his shoulders, each step echoing the painful reality of what his employees endured daily. Down the so, elevator doors slid shut, sealing him away from the eyes that had watched him fall. For the first time since beginning his undercover experiment, Amir felt the sting, not as a disguised billionaire, but as a man stripped of dignity in front of strangers. Upstairs, in the privacy of the suite reserved for him under his true identity, Amir removed the uniform with steady hands. He stared at the folded fabric, its seams still warm from the humiliation he had endured. He had wanted to see the truth, and the truth had struck him harder than he expected. The firing wasn't just a punishment for a broken vase, it was a reflection of a system rotting under Victor's leadership. A system where workers had no voice, no protection, no chance. He sat on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on the city lights of Dubai shimmering against the night sky. This fall, this humiliation, had awakened something inside him. Not anger, not revenge, purpose. Victor believed he had removed an inconvenience from his hotel. What he had actually done was ignite a reckoning, one that was already forming in Amir's mind, quiet yet unstoppable, like the first tremor before a storm. Hours after the incident, as the city of Dubai glowed beneath the desert night, Victor Crane paced inside his office, agitated. The firing should have restored his confidence, should have reaffirmed his authority. But something about the young worker's calmness lingered in his mind like a thorn. He replayed the moment repeatedly, the precise corrections, the flawless financial logic, the confidence hidden beneath humble clothing. Something didn't add up. And just as Victor tried to shove the doubts aside, a vibration buzzed on his desk. An unexpected message appeared on his phone, coming directly from corporate headquarters, an internal channel reserved only for top-level executives. Urgent. Regional owner demands immediate meeting in penthouse suite 77. Attend now. The words hit him like ice water. The owner never contacted him directly. Meetings with the Al-Haddad family were scheduled weeks in advance, filtered through layers of assistants. For them to demand his presence instantly meant one of two things: a major business crisis, or that he had made a mistake big enough to reach the highest level. Victor straightened his tie, heart pounding beneath his expensive suit as he stepped into the private elevator reserved for elite access. His mind raced with possibilities, financial discrepancies, investor complaints, legal issues, but nothing terrified him more than the possibility of disappointing the Al-Haddad family. Their influence stretched across the Middle East like a silent empire. Crossing them meant professional exile. When the elevator doors slid open onto the penthouse floor, Victor slowed. The hallway was dim, lit only by soft ambient lights that reflected off the marble walls. At the end of the corridor, the suite door was ajar, as if inviting him in. His pulse thudded in his ears. This wasn't normal protocol, not even close. He hesitated for a fraction of a second before raising his hand and knocking gently, his usual arrogance stripped away by uncertainty. A voice from inside answered, unfamiliar yet commanding. "Enter, Mr. Crane." Victor pushed the door open, then froze. The suite was immaculate, arranged with quiet elegance, the panoramic windows revealing Dubai's skyline shimmering like a constellation of gold. But none of that mattered. Standing near the window was a figure dressed in a pristine white kandura, posture straight, presence imposing, his gaze fixed on Victor with a calm that felt unnervingly powerful. In that moment, Victor felt something he hadn't felt in years: vulnerability. He didn't recognize the man, yet there was something about him, an aura, a steadiness, a weight that made the room feel smaller. Without knowing why, Victor swallowed hard, sensing that this meeting was not a formality. It was a reckoning waiting to unfold. Victor stepped fully into the suite, and the door closed behind him with a soft click that felt strangely final. The man by the window turned slowly, and Victor finally saw his face. Calm, composed, dignified, with eyes that held the quiet authority of someone used to commanding entire industries. "Mr. Crane," the man said. "Please sit." It wasn't a suggestion. Victor obeyed, lowering himself into the leather chair with a stiffness that betrayed his anxiety. The stranger remained standing, hands clasped behind his back, his voice steady as he continued. "I've reviewed the internal reports for this hotel. There are concerning patterns." Victor felt his stomach tighten. Before he could defend himself, the man cut him off with a small gesture. "And there is an inspection coming, one that will determine the future of your regional operations." Victor blinked. No one outside the highest ranks knew about that inspection. Whoever this man was, he had access and power far beyond his own. The stranger finally stepped closer, and the dim light revealed something Victor should have recognized sooner, the engraved emblem pinned discreetly to the kandura, the Al-Haddad crest. Victor's breath caught. He shot to his feet instinctively, bowing his head with sudden desperation. "Sir, I wasn't informed of your arrival. If I had been told—" The man raised one hand, stopping him cold. "You weren't told because I needed to see the truth myself." His words fell with the weight of judgment. "And what I witnessed in your lobby today—" He let the sentence trail off, not with anger, but with disappointment. Victor's knees weakened. "You saw that," he whispered. The man nodded once. "I did." Silence filled the room like smoke. Victor opened his mouth, scrambling for excuses, but the man continued with a calmness sharper than a blade. "You humiliated someone you didn't understand, and now you need that person more than you know." Victor frowned, confused, until the man delivered the truth like a quiet thunderclap. "The worker you fired," he said, "is the only one who can prepare this hotel in time for the inspection. He understands the operational weaknesses better than any manager you have. If this property fails, your entire division collapses, and you," his gaze locked onto Victor with unblinking clarity, "cannot fix this alone." Victor's mouth went dry. His thoughts tripped over themselves. That employee, that quiet, steady-eyed young man, the one he had humiliated in front of everyone. Why would someone like that hold the key to saving the hotel? Yet the certainty in the stranger's voice left no room for doubt. Victor felt the ground shift beneath him. He, Victor Crane, the iron-fisted manager who ruled through fear, needed the very man he had crushed hours earlier. And for the first time since taking his position, he felt the terrifying sensation of not being in control. Amir stepped forward, letting the soft glow of the suite's lights reveal his face fully. And at last, Victor recognized him. Recognition didn't come from memory, but from instinct. The posture, the confidence, the calm authority that radiated from someone who had never answered to men like Victor. Amir let the silence settle before speaking, his voice low but unwavering. "Sit, Mr. Crane." This time Victor obeyed instantly. Amir took the opposite seat, folding his hands on the table between them. "You want to save this hotel," he said. "You want to save your position, and I can help you do both, but not under the conditions you've created." Victor felt every word push deeper into him, not shouted, not angry, simply true. Amir continued, "Before I agree to anything, you will understand this clearly. I don't work under intimidation. I don't allow disrespect. And I do not tolerate cruelty toward people who work to survive." Each sentence hit harder than the last, a quiet dismantling of Victor's entire leadership style. Victor opened his mouth, struggling to find a way to defend himself, but Amir didn't allow space for excuses. "Today, you humiliated someone you believed was beneath you," he said, his eyes locked onto Victor with a precision that left no room for retreat. There was no investigation, no conversation, no dignity, just power, misused. Victor lowered his gaze, the weight of his actions finally settling on him without the armor of authority. Amir leaned back slightly, his voice softening but gaining impact. The staff here is drowning under pressure you pretend not to see. Systems are outdated, departments are understaffed, morale is collapsing, and you've been so focused on appearing perfect that you've ignored the rot underneath. Victor swallowed, the truth burning more than any reprimand he had ever delivered to others. For the first time, he wasn't the one holding fear over someone. Fear was pressing down on him. Then Amir delivered the terms, each one precise, each one non-negotiable. If I return to fix what you've broken, I do it with full autonomy. No interference. I will restructure departments, reassign roles, rewrite protocols, and you will comply. Victor's head snapped up, startled by the magnitude of the demand, but Amir wasn't finished. You will treat every employee with dignity, especially the ones you overlooked. Every decision we make will prioritize stability and well-being, not just numbers on your reports. He let the final condition fall with deliberate weight. And if you ever, even once, undermine the reforms I implement, I will remove you from this hotel myself. The room went silent. Victor sat frozen, breath shallow, realizing that the balance of power had shifted entirely. And yet, beneath the fear, something unexpected stirred. A small, reluctant flicker of respect for the man he had underestimated. Amir stood, signaling the end of the negotiation. "If you agree," he said quietly, "we begin at dawn." Victor nodded, defeated yet dependent, sealing a partnership he never imagined he would need. When dawn broke over Dubai, the hotel was already stirring with an energy none of the employees could quite explain. Amir walked through the staff entrance, not in the borrowed uniform of a worker, and not in the royal elegance of the night before, but in a clean, understated outfit that blended professionalism with humility. He gathered the staff in the main service hall, a place usually filled with rushed footsteps and tired sighs. Today, however, it held a different kind of tension, anticipation. Workers whispered as he stepped forward, unsure of who he truly was, but sensing a shift in the air. Amir addressed them with a voice that carried calm authority. "We are going to rebuild this place from the inside," he said. "Not for the investors, not for the guests, for you." The room grew still. Many hadn't heard meaningful words from upper management in years. Amir began the reforms immediately. He restructured cleaning rotations to avoid exhaustion, redistributed workload across departments, and held small group meetings to understand the daily struggles invisible to corporate charts. He stayed in the laundry room until midnight to learn its bottlenecks, followed bellhops through blistering afternoon heat to understand their roots, sat in the kitchen during the lunch rush to see how supply chains failed under pressure. He listened more than he spoke, and for the first time in a long time, workers felt seen. His knowledge was uncanny. He predicted system failures before they happened, spotted inefficiencies no manager had ever bothered to notice, and redesigned workflows in ways that made even the most skeptical employees lift their heads with cautious hope. The rumors spread quickly. This man was different. He didn't command from above. He worked beside them. Meanwhile, Victor watched quietly from a distance, his usual arrogance stripped away, replaced by a strange mix of awe and discomfort. Every reform Amir introduced exposed weaknesses Victor had ignored for years. Every improvement revealed just how blind he had been to the needs of his own staff. But instead of resenting Amir, he found himself learning, unwillingly at first, then genuinely. He saw the respect building among the workers, saw the pride creeping back into their posture, saw the hotel's energy transform from fear-driven to purpose-driven. Day by day, the property began to function like a living organism healing itself. Rooms ran smoother, complaints dropped, quality rose, and amid it all, Amir stood at the center of the transformation, calm, tireless, committed. He had come undercover to observe, but now he was rebuilding an entire ecosystem with the kind of leadership that could not be taught, only lived. And the real test, the final arena, was drawing closer with each sunrise. Inspection day arrived with the weight of a final judgment. From the moment the sun rose over the desert horizon, the hotel hummed with a sharp, nervous energy that pulsed through every hallway. Black SUVs rolled up the entrance, delivering government inspectors, international investors, and representatives from safety and labor boards, people whose assessments could either elevate the hotel to global acclaim or shut down half of Victor's division overnight. The lobby, once the stage of Amir's humiliation, was now polished to a mirror sheen. Staff stood straighter, eyes alert yet proud, carrying the quiet confidence of people who knew they had been prepared properly. Amir walked through the space with a calm, grounded presence, greeting workers by name, offering a reassuring nod to those who trembled at the thought of scrutiny. The hotel wasn't perfect yet, but it was stronger, cleaner, smarter, united. For the first time in years, the staff felt they were standing on solid ground instead of shifting sand. Amir led the inspectors personally, moving from department to department with the grace of someone who understood every hidden mechanism behind the hotel's polished facade. He presented redesigned systems, introduced supervisors who had blossomed under the new structure, and demonstrated workflow changes that had reduced waste and improved service quality. The inspectors asked sharp, critical questions, probing for weaknesses, but Amir absorbed each one with steady precision. He explained cost-saving measures, safety improvements, and updated training procedures that had already begun to transform operations. Investors exchanged impressed glances. The head inspector, known for her brutal honesty, nodded more than once, a rare gesture that employees noticed immediately, giving them the courage to stand taller. Even Victor, following quietly behind the group, felt a swelling pride he hadn't expected. Watching Amir command the room, not with arrogance but with mastery, made something inside him shift. Respect, genuine respect. But the arena wasn't just about systems and protocols, it was about truth. And truth has a way of revealing itself in the smallest details. As the group approached the service corridors and back-of-house areas, the places where hotels hid their chaos, Amir felt the pressure tighten, not with fear, but with anticipation. This was where the real test lay, not in the glittering lobby or the luxury suites, but in the spaces where workers spent most of their hours, the spaces Victor had once allowed to decay under neglect. Yet today, those hallways were functional, organized, shining with renewed purpose. Inspectors nodded, taking notes, visibly impressed. And still, beneath the surface, something else lingered, an unease, a subtle tension Amir couldn't yet name. The arena was set, the players assembled, the scrutiny absolute. And though everything seemed on track, he knew that in every great trial, an unseen threat often waited in the shadows. But as Amir guided the inspectors deeper into the hotel's core, the subtle unease he'd sensed earlier sharpened into something more tangible. In the narrow corridors behind the banquet halls, where stainless steel carts lined the walls and pipes hummed overhead, a figure lingered just out of sight, watching, calculating. Lionel Pierce, Victor's assistant, moved with the quiet precision of a man who had something to lose. Unlike Victor, Lionel didn't wield his power openly. He used whispers, forged documents, manipulated numbers. Shadows were his natural habitat. And Amir's sudden rise had threatened the entire system of shortcuts and hidden abuses Lionel had built for years. If the inspection passed, if Amir's reforms were implemented permanently, Lionel's ability to operate unseen would vanish. So he had done what men like him always did when cornered. He sabotaged, While the inspectors reviewed the updated maintenance logs and safety certifications, Lionel slipped into a restricted office with the ease of someone who had memorized every blind spot of the security cameras. From a locked drawer, he retrieved the falsified documents he had prepared the night before. Records showing skipped fire safety checks, inflated injury claims, and maintenance violations severe enough to shut down entire floors. His plan was simple: plant them among the official papers so the inspectors would find them, panic, and fail the hotel instantly. And in the inevitable chaos, he would blame Amir, claiming the mysterious worker-turned-advisor had rushed reforms and hidden problems. Lionel's pulse quickened with anticipation as he slid the forged documents into the inspection portfolio left on the table. To him, this wasn't just survival, it was revenge for the sudden loss of influence. If the hotel failed, Victor would fall. Amir would be discredited, and Lionel, quietly innocent in the aftermath, could present himself as the only loyal constant in a collapsing hierarchy. But sabotage, no matter how carefully planned, always leaves a faint scent, an inconsistency, a detail out of place. And Amir, with his uncanny ability to read systems like maps, felt something was wrong the moment he returned to the group. A small misalignment in the stack of forms. A single paper corner not matching the angle of the others. A signature slightly too fresh. His instincts sharpened, and a slow, deliberate awareness spread through him. Someone was trying to sabotage not just the inspection, but the workers, the reforms, the future he was fighting to build. The hidden enemy had made his move. And Amir knew that from this moment forward, every step would have to be taken with meticulous precision, because the arena was no longer just a test of leadership. Now, it was a battlefield of truth versus deception. Amir paused mid-step, his attention tightening on the stack of documents clipped inside the inspection folder. On the surface, nothing seemed overtly wrong, but years of running an empire had taught him to recognize the smallest fractures, the tiny signatures of human deception. He slid one document free with a controlled motion, his eyes scanning the ink, the formatting, the timestamps. And then he saw it. A policy code referenced in the safety report that hadn't existed until 3 months after the date printed on the file. An impossible detail, a ghost from the future embedded in a past record. His pulse slowed, mind sharpening, every sense narrowing into focus. Someone was trying to fabricate violations so severe they could shut down operations instantly. The inspectors hadn't noticed yet, but they would, and the fallout would destroy everything the staff had worked for these past weeks. Lionel's sabotage wasn't just malicious. It was weaponized incompetence disguised as official truth. Amir flipped through more pages with methodical calm, each sheet revealing another inconsistency only a trained eye, or the owner himself, would ever catch. Safety checks signed by employees who weren't even on payroll at the time. Maintenance logs using terminology introduced only after Amir implemented reforms. Ink that hadn't fully dried, fresh, glossy, betraying its creation within the last hour. Every clue layered atop the next, forming a picture so clear it burned. Lionel had engineered a trap meant to collapse the entire hotel under the weight of falsified negligence. And worse, it was designed to frame the workers, making it appear as though Amir's emergency restructuring had been reckless and cosmetic. He felt a slow, rising anger, not for himself, but for the staff whose livelihoods were being used as collateral in a petty act of desperation. But outwardly, Amir remained composed. He knew the slightest misstep, raising his voice, confronting someone publicly, panicking, would draw suspicion from the inspectors and play directly into Lionel's narrative. The trap wasn't only written on paper, it was psychological, built to provoke reactive chaos. So instead, Amir closed the folder gently, as though nothing were amiss, and turned to the lead inspector with a calm smile. "Before we continue," he said, I'd like to review these records with one more person. There are details here best, explained by staff familiar with historical maintenance protocols. The inspector nodded, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Amir walked toward the service hallway, each step deliberate, already planning the counterattack. Lionel thought he had hidden his deception well, but he had forgotten one crucial truth. Amir had built this empire, and no one forged its documents without leaving fingerprints he could see. Amir moved through the service corridor with a quiet determination, his footsteps steady as he carried the folder of falsified documents at his side. He didn't need to search for Lionel. Men who sabotage always linger near the aftermath, waiting with rehearsed innocence to insert themselves at the perfect moment. And there he was, standing by the maintenance office door, pretending to check inventory while glancing toward the inspectors every few seconds. Amir approached him with the calm precision of a surgeon, offering a polite nod. "Lionel," he said, his tone almost friendly, "I need your expertise. The inspectors want clarification on some of these older reports." Lionel's eyes flickered with a brief panic before he masked it with a dutiful smile. He followed Amir into the office, unaware that the trap had already begun closing around him. Amir placed the folder on the desk, choosing a room with security cameras clearly visible, a detail Lionel failed to notice, too focused on controlling the narrative. "Please," Amir said, sliding the documents forward, "walk me through these records. You know the history better than anyone." Lionel examined the first page, and for a moment he hesitated, too long, too carefully, betraying his guilt. But Amir didn't rush him. Instead, he offered a casual question, spoken with deliberate innocence. Were these policy codes already in effect at the time? The moment the words left Amir's lips, Lionel reacted defensively. "Of course they were," he said hastily, tapping the document with forced confidence. "These procedures have been standard for years." Amir nodded slowly, as if absorbing the information, though his eyes flicked briefly toward the camera, capturing Lionel's lie in perfect clarity. Then Amir opened the next page, pointing to a maintenance signature. "And this employee, he completed this check personally?" Lionel nodded again, more rigidly this time. "Yes, absolutely." Amir let the silence stretch before responding, his voice gentle but carrying the weight of inevitability. "Interesting," he said, "because this employee didn't join the hotel until 8 months after this date." A beat of silence. Lionel's breath caught, his eyes widened, his mask cracked. Before Lionel could recover, Amir slowly gathered all the documents and stepped back, forcing Lionel into the camera's frame. "Lionel," he said softly, "I need you to be very careful with your next words. Inspectors are waiting. If there's been a misunderstanding, you should explain it now." The pressure mounted instantly. Lionel's composure dissolved under the weight of fear and exposure. He stammered, tried to justify the inconsistencies, then made the fatal mistake. He blamed the staff, claimed delays, shortcuts, maybe lost paperwork, but in his panic he revealed too much. He referenced files he shouldn't have known existed, mentioned corrections he claimed never to have made, contradicted his own stories within seconds. The camera captured every word, and Amir, with a quiet finality, closed the folder and said, "Thank you, Lionel. That's all I needed." When they returned to the inspectors, Lionel pale and trembling, Amir handed over the folder and simply stated, "We have a situation requiring your immediate attention, documented thoroughly." The trap snapped shut. Lionel had incriminated himself, and not through accusation, but through his own unraveling. When Amir returned to the inspection team with Lionel trailing behind him, pale and hollow-eyed, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The inspectors sensed the tension, but Amir didn't rush. He set the folder gently on the table, opened it to the first forged page, and spoke with the calm authority of someone who trusted truth to do the heavy lifting. "Before we proceed with your final evaluation," he said, "there is something you need to see." Lionel swallowed hard, his hands trembling. The lead inspector leaned forward, curiosity sharpening into suspicion as she studied the documents. Amir pointed out the first inconsistency, the policy code that didn't exist at the time, then the forged signature, then the incorrect timestamps. One by one, he unveiled the threads of deception until the entire fabric of Lionel's scheme lay exposed. The inspectors exchanged glances, their expressions darkening. It wasn't just fraud, it was a deliberate attempt to manipulate an official audit, and their anger was immediate. As Lionel tried to defend himself, his voice cracked under the weight of evidence. It wasn't me," he stammered. "I was told, someone said—" But Amir remained silent, allowing Lionel to sink deeper into contradictions. The inspectors asked precise, unforgiving questions. "Why were you in possession of these documents? Why do your explanations conflict with recorded staff schedules? How do you explain the security footage showing you entering the records office minutes before our arrival?" With each question, Lionel's facade crumbled further until finally, under pressure he could no longer withstand, he confessed. Not with dignity, not with coherence, but with the panicked desperation of a man who realized his career, his reputation, and his future had just collapsed. The inspectors halted the tour immediately and informed Victor that an official report would be filed against Lionel for fraudulent interference with a government audit. Staff members, watching from afar, felt a wave of shock, quickly followed by quiet, rising relief. Justice, long overdue, had finally pierced the walls of fear. But the true victory came moments later. The lead inspector, after reviewing every department, walked into the lobby, this time filled with workers who had gathered anxiously. She cleared her throat, and silence rippled outward. "This hotel," she said, her voice firm, "meets and exceeds the standards required for certification. In fact, it demonstrates one of the most impressive operational turnarounds we have seen in years." A collective exhale filled the room, some choked with emotion, others with stunned disbelief. Staff exchanged glances of pride and gratitude as Amir stood quietly behind them, offering a small, humble nod. Victor, standing near the back, closed his eyes with relief, knowing how close they had come to disaster. Cameras flashed, investors applauded, and for the first time the staff felt like the heart of the hotel, not its shadow. Amir hadn't just saved the inspection, he had dismantled corruption, restored dignity, and proven that leadership wasn't about fear or power. It was about lifting people. And in that moment, with the entire hotel erupting into applause, his victory became theirs.